This video is a step-by-step guide on how to solve the Gold Baron Legends number 1 Stagecoach Robbery Part 2 puzzle quest, which is the story of Isaiah Weber. We are not going to go through the story itself, we're just going to solve the puzzles. And of course, you are encouraged to try to solve them on your own first, but if you want to just go along for the ride, or maybe just use this to get past a point that you've gotten stuck, feel free to do so. So what we're going to do is we will scroll down to the bottom of this page and click on Follow Isaiah. And this first page here is just giving us some of the context of the story, so we can skip it and go to the next part. And Isaiah is writing his first letter to Ebenezer, and he has a little riddle here. It says, "After fire has eaten its fill, that which smothers flame when left behind, dust to dust." And that's that first clue right there, dust to dust, is from a famous saying, ashes to ashes, dust to dust. Also, after fire has burned something, so the fire has eaten its fill, after it's burned it, the fuel turns into ash. And ashes, if left in a fireplace for a long time, can actually smother the flames when they're left behind. So if you have a wood stove and it's just full of ash, and it will actually smother the flames and put out the fire eventually. So the answer is ashes. Click on continue. We're going to type in ashes. They're all capital letters. And it takes us to the next part of the story, and he finds the letter in the ashes beneath the stove. And now we're going to come to the next puzzle. And he says here, what you need next is written below, all capitals, no spaces. And right here is actually the clue we need. Read along the rail, not across the fence. And at the time of when this story is being written, a popular cipher that people would use was called a rail cipher or a rail fence cipher. So that right there should be your big clue that you need to do a rail fence cipher. And he says, count every letter in your first name to read it the old way. So he's writing to Eb. So we know that Eb's name is Ebenezer, and it has 8 numbers in it. So that 8 is the key for this rail fence cipher. It's kind of hard to explain some of these ciphers, so I'm going to show you the solutions and give you kind of an idea without explaining exactly every step-by-step on how to decrypt it. We're going to take this right here, and if you actually go on Google, you can find a rail fence cipher decoder. And if we went in there and we decoded this is the text that we had, and there are 8 rails because there are 8 letters in the name Ebenezer. The rail fence cipher will actually look like this. So if you were to decrypt it yourself, it would follow this zigzag pattern, and it would say between the logs. So we're going to go back here, and we're going to do, this one actually does specifically say no spaces. So we're going to type that in here, between, the logs. So now we've come to this page, you can see actually that it's a rail fence cipher, and you could have solved it the correct way, or even with a rail fence cipher, actually, it's just the same letters that are rearranged. So you could have just rearranged the letters and possibly gotten lucky, or just brute forced it and done it over and over again until you figured it out. So now we need to solve the next part. So what we're going to do is, it says last name sets the letters. So earlier he used the name Ebenezer. So again, there were 8 letters in his first name. So now we're going to use his last name, which is Underwood, to solve this next one. So Underwood is our key. And he says, this antimatter of sums or totals, though it may read like numbers at first. And that just means it may be confusing at first. So it's not sums or totals. So you're not adding, it's substitution. And during this time period, there was something called a substitution cipher, and we have a key, so it's a keyed substitution cipher. And basically what it's saying right here is one mark or one letter stands in place of another, and they're all keyed the same. So we're going to use a substitution cipher, and the key is his last name, Underwood. And so we're going to try to decipher this. So I have here on a Google search, it's a basic explanation of a substitution cipher with keys, and they use the example of cipher. So what you do is you take the keyword, so in our case it would be Underwood, and you write that out at the beginning, and you can't double any letters. So it would be UNDERWO, and you don't have another O because there's only one O in the alphabet, and then you don't use the letter D again because it was earlier in Underwood. So it'd say Underwoe, and then the alphabet continues like normal with all of those letters. They've just been rearranged. So all the Underwoe gets moved to the beginning, and then the rest of the alphabet remains the same. And so A becomes C, B becomes I in this case, or of course, if it was Underwood, A would become U, and then B would become N, etc. So what we're going to do is we're going to take this and you would put it into that. And of course, you could just go in and find a substitution cipher that can do it for you if you wanted, but that becomes above table. So now he goes up into the attic. There's a ladder on the table. So he goes up into the attic and he finds that the skeleton of Isaiah. So what we're going to do is we come down here and he's got another riddle. So it says, I counted to 5 till all were spent. The 6th I kept for the gravedigger. The iron sarcophagus makes payment. So we have to figure out what this riddle means. And when you think of something where it's, it's counting till 5 and then there's 6. So it's like he's got a 6-shooter. So he has a 6-shooter on his hip. And so what's that mean? So he counts to 5. So when you're shooting with a gun, you do want to keep track of how many shots you've made. So if he was in a duel against somebody else, he would count till 5. And this is actually a falsehood, and it says so in the next part of the riddle, but just for the sake of the story and keeping it fun, there's a myth that back in the day, gunslingers used to keep some money inside of the chambers of their guns. They'd have the 6th chamber would have a bill in there. And what was great is, it would also have a dual purpose of preventing misfires. Because if you have that hammer and it accidentally got cocked and then it went forward and hit the bullet, it would misfire, but they wouldn't have a bullet there. It would be money. And then if they got killed in their gunfight, that money could be used to pay the gravedigger and pay for the coffin. So that's what it's talking about here. So they have their gun and the 6th chamber, and that's kind of pointed to here, a sarcophagus, right? So when you die, your sarcophagus, you get put into a chamber. So the iron, a gun is called an iron. So the iron chamber, gun chamber, makes payment. So in that empty gun chamber where instead of the bullet, there's money. So the answer here is actually just chamber. We're going to hit go. Here it is. And you can see the bullet's missing because he shot the snake from earlier. And then here's the next clue. And again, I do explain that is truly a myth, but we just did it for the sake of the story. And so now we have a chess set puzzle. And this is the most difficult one. And you can see all of these are all of the chess pieces and where they're placed on the board. You can see it's white's turn to move, and every move is going to be a capture. So you have all these chess pieces, and they all have a letter engraved on them. And so we have a picture here of what that would look like. So here's an example chess piece. There isn't actually a king in this situation. There's no pawns. So what I did is I have chess.com, and you can actually do this with an actual chess set. You could have done this with something like this where you have a digital chessboard. And I went and I set up each of these pieces. So B3 is a black bishop. So if you come on here, this is B on a chess set, and then 3. So I put a black bishop here. And then you go to the next one. B5 is a black knight. So you go to B, and then you come up to 5. So B5 is a black knight. And you continue doing that, and you put all of the pieces on the chessboard. And just like the final puzzle in Ebenezer's story, this is a little bit of a brute force trial and error to figure this out. But it's white's turn to move. And every piece is a capture. So there's a lot of options. This knight could capture this bishop. It could capture this rook. And then this one, he could capture this rook, this knight, this bishop. It could capture this knight. And then, so each one of these white pieces has several options it could capture. So this rook could capture this one, it could capture this one. So you have to look at the different letters of the different pieces. So in this case, the first one is actually this queen. It is, if we go over here and look, the white queen is an O, and it ends up capturing this castle, or sorry, this this rook. So it captures that, and that rook had a B on it, so it's OB. And you keep doing that, and I won't do it through the entire thing, but it ends up writing out the letters obtain silver. So you come down here, you hit find this dash, and you type in obtain silver. And we have the secret drawer with the silver in it. You click on claim the prize, and it sends me an email, and it would tell me what the solution was. And I will see that whoever sent me that email with the code word, be the first person to win the silver bar, which again has already been claimed. So that explains all the puzzles for the second half of the story. Thanks for watching.